you guys know I'm a nerd for the schedule release. I've said that about 1,000 times. We've talked about it the last, 2, 3 weeks now. Um, and so slowly I'm going over the schedule release, right? It's of every team schedule, right? It's kind of the slow season in the NFL. There's not a ton of stories right now. We got like mini camp right now, rookie mini camp. OTAs are coming up soon, but none of that's super intriguing unless any big injuries or anything, any big moves happen. But so that's why I kind of slowly look over the schedules. Who's got a good draw? Who's got a bad draw? Right? I'm looking over the schedules, and then a story comes out that wide receiver for the Raiders, Devontae Adams, is already kind of unhappy with the team. I think he's a little bit pissed off to begin with that he went to Vegas to be with his old buddy and his old college teammate Derek Carr. Right? Obviously they trade him, or I guess yeah. They trade him to what the Saints, right? Yeah. So he moves on. They let him go, and they replace him with Jimmy Garoppolo. That's fine. In my eyes, though, nothing really changes. Right? So I said this last year, and I got a ton of pushback. The Raiders love the moves, right? They went out and got Devontae Adams. They got Chandler Jones. They got 2 good pass rushers, a couple good receivers. They had Darren Waller at the time. Josh Jacobs, was set for a big year, and he had a big year. Offensive line was still iffy, but improving. And I said, okay. And I like Derek Carr, but they still have the 4th best quarterback in the division. I mean, Russ played like the 4th best quarterback, but on paper, and let's be real, Derek Carr was the 4th best quarterback in the division. And I think Jimmy G is the 4th best quarterback in the division. So I said nothing really changes, and I personally would probably even take Derek Carr. And so I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. So he's unhappy. Jimmy G comes in. It's a new system. And so I said, let's look at the schedule. Right? I'm looking at it. They open at Denver, tough one. Then they go to Buffalo. Brutal first 2 games. And then they finally come home for Pittsburgh in prime time. Okay, good luck. Then they go to the Chargers. They get the Packers at home. That should be pretty favorable. They get the Patriots at home, but we know how Bill is against assistants. Then they go to Chicago, which I'm not a huge buyer of Chicago, but they're going to be improved. They're not going to be a cakewalk like last year. Then they go to Detroit. That's probably a loss. The Giants, that's a flip a coin game. Jets, that's a loss. Dolphins, Chiefs, Vikings, Chargers again, Chiefs again, Colts, Broncos. Good playoff teams, even average wild card teams. You could look at their schedule. You could pick out about 4 to 5 wins, and you're like, oh, that's an easy win. Like, that's no problem. Here I'm looking through. I mean, the Colts, that's probably a fairly easy win. They probably beat the Bears and the Packers. Those are the only 3, though, that I can be like, oh, yeah, that's a win. More than likely. That doesn't feel like a playoff team. And if you just close your eyes and say this, right? Josh McDaniels, or let's just go, we'll exclude names. The head coach is under 500 as a head coach. He's relatively new as a head coach. Not super well liked. Drafted Tim Tebow. That didn't work out. Came for Derek Carr, but moved off him after a year. Okay. Offensive line was ranked somewhere in the middle of the pack, and it's not getting much better. Interesting. Wide receivers unhappy. Your next best wide receiver feels more like a 3 than a 2 in Hunter Renfrow. Yeah, you get a new tight end this year, but you just dealt one of the game's best tight ends. You got no DBs. The franchise has been historically chaotic in the last 25 years. You have one of the poorest owners. Pass rush has 2 good pass rushers, but somehow still underwhelms a little bit. That's the resume. Your quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo. He's injury prone. Decent in big games, but let's be real, it's all underneath stuff. And who knows, outside of the Kyle Shanahan system, who knows how dynamic he can be? Probably not very, if I had to venture a guess. Again, and I'm a Jimmy fan, I would venture a guess he's not going to be as good with Kyle. And even with Kyle, he was more like a B to a B minus quarterback than he was a B plus quarterback, which is what you need to be in the AFC to at least be competing for the 6th or 7th spot. Does that feel like a playoff team to you? Absolutely not. And I know all the Raiders fans, what are you talking about? They're going to be in the comments. Are you out of your mind? Absolutely not. I'm not out of my mind. I mean, the Chargers are certainly going to be better. Kellen Moore is a fantastic offensive coordinator. They returned 2 starters on the offensive line coming back from injury. They're going to be significantly better. Justin Herbert has yet another year under his belt. They're going to be better. You cannot convince me that the Broncos are not going to be almost double their win total. Would they win 5 or 6 games? If they're not around 10 to 11 wins next year, I'll be damned. With Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, you're telling me Russell Wilson went from 100-plus pass rating for 4 straight years, dips like that, is going to get a Hall of Fame coach, and has none of that left in the tank after 1 year? You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. You get a good running back. Their offensive line's finally healthy. They get a good receiver back, Tim Patrick. Defense was even good last year. It's going to be good again. That's going to be a very good team. That's probably a better roster, better coaching staff, better quarterback. And the Chiefs are the Chiefs. We don't even have to really talk about them. And that's just in their division alone. I'm not even talking the conference. I think Cincinnati's a better football team. I think Baltimore's a better football team. I think Pittsburgh's a better football team. I think you could argue me into Cleveland being a better football team, and I don't even like Cleveland this year. I think Jacksonville's a better football team. I think Tennessee has the culture and the coaching to be right there with Vegas. I think Miami's a better football team, at least offensively in an offensive league. That's a better football team. I think they're better coached. I think Buffalo's a much better football team. I think the Jets with Aaron Rodgers are a better team. What's that put Vegas at, like 11 or 12?
On a good day.
I mean, what I said, everybody in the NFC North, that's 4 right there. I said, Jacksonville and Tennessee probably. We had, 3 teams in the AFC East. And I think they're the worst team in their division. That's 1, 2, 3. Puts them at 12 or 13 in the AFC out of 16 teams. That feels like a playoff team to you guys? No, it's not a playoff team. You're delusional. And I like Jimmy G. I do. I think he's a fine quarterback. I've said for years, I thought he was a little bit underrated, especially in big games. But it's right there. Go look at the resume. Go look at what they're made of. Go look at the coach, the quarterback, the weapons. If Devontae's unhappy after the first 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks are, the first 8 weeks we'll go with. Right? They probably start 1-3, 0-4, maybe sneak in 2 of 3 between the Packers, Patriots, and Bears, lose to the Lions. You could easily be 2-6, 3-5. You think Devontae's sticking around for that? That's a last place team. That's a fourth place team. You cannot have the 4th best quarterback in your division and expect to be competitive for the division. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's just not.
There's not much to hang your hat on if you're the Raiders right now. We talked last week about teams needing the schedule to go their way because they need things to boost them up. They need cards to fall their way. They need things to make them, at least mask them, to make them look a little bit better, maybe catch a couple lucky wins here and there.
Yeah.
But there's really none of that this year for Vegas.
Nothing.
It's going to be, I'm not going to say weird, just because the division they're in, it's not a shock. It's not a shock that they're going to be last in the AFC West. The AFC West is the best division in football.
They're going to be 1-5, 0-6 in their own division alone. Come on, that's a playoff team. Get out of here.
Playoff teams are not 1-5 in division.
No, they're not. I can't wait for this to be a hit someday. I know it. After the season, it's going to be a hit. We'll be right, and I'll be telling you all about it. But for right now, let's start with the